All right, people, welcome to another edition of the New Breed Show / podcast / whatever you want to call us, the world's best music, topical music entertainment, talking about everything brutal, new death, hard slam, grind, thrashcore, metal. I am one half of your hosting duo, Jay Horskow. With me, I have my partner in crime, the notorious TIM, Tim Anderson Jr. How are we?
Yo, good, not bad.
And joining us again, a repeat offender, joining us from the newly snowed Northeast, we have Mr. Jonathan Carr. Jonathan, thank you for joining.
Actually, it was 60 degrees today and everything's melted.
Same thing here.
I was just about to say, you got snow today?
Same thing
we
here.
got snow within the last week, though.
Saturday.
Yeah.
Yeah, Saturday was like a winter wonderland, and then Sunday it was like, the fuck is this? Well, whatever. All right, so
and then Monday was cold again too.
So John is quickly becoming our go-to guest when it comes to this type of show. So we're doing another episode of In Defense Of, where if you haven't checked it out before, we recruit someone to come in and talk to us about an album that Tim or I or both of us have very, very strong feelings on, because we want a fan of this album to come in and explain to us, what are we missing? What are we not getting? And for this episode, we are doing the sophomore release from Rob Zombie's kid brother, Powerman 5000, Tonight the Stars Revolt. So, did you listen to this?
For me?
Yes, the album?
Yeah, I listened to it. It was revolting.
Dad jokes in the first 3 minutes. Okay. I did listen to it. And this is the first time I've ever listened to it all the way through. I've usually just picked at it in chunks. And I'm curious to hear what John has to say in defense of it, because in my overarching statement is, while it's not great, it's not terrible. It just is, but it wasn't what I was expecting. So John, take it away. What are Tim and I missing here?
Okay, so I'm going to say this right off the bat. I may both be the best person and the worst person to come on and defend this album. So let's go back to 1999. 15-year-old John. So my 6 favorite albums at this time are Marilyn Manson's Mechanical Animals, Rob Zombie's Hellbilly Deluxe, Powerman 5000's Tonight the Stars Revolt, White Zombie's Astro Creep 2000, also Marilyn Manson's Antichrist Superstar, and then the weird one from the group, Monster Magnet's Power Trip. So I have been sitting with this album for 23 years. So I
see a trend with them 6 albums.
Yeah, I was gonna say there is a through line there. Even Monster Magnet isn't as much as an outlier as you would think.
It was the thing is, that was also the period of time, because I was 15 at the time. Before that, all my friends listened to like pop and rap music, so my rock exposure didn't exist. I think I'd mentioned this before. So my first exposure was this, and then like some light alternative rock first, but then those bands. So there was something about the industrial aesthetic of, like, not even so much like industrial music, but just the textures that bands like Marilyn Manson or 9 Inch Nails or Powerman 5000 or the last White Zombie album had, that just drew me in. So I also really like Spider's vocals, which I know a lot of people do not. So like that's a drawing point for me. Like, I like his vocals in the album. I really like the guitar work, both the slightly heavier guitars and like the stuff that's like got 3 or 4 different effects on it. The only things that I'm not the biggest fan of on the album, aside from the closing song, which I do not like at all.
And it doesn't fit right after a cover. Like, it doesn't fit. Like, I kind of felt like, did Spotify skip forward? Is this like a different album? Yeah.
That album, that song, like, if there was any place to put it on the album, because they clearly wanted it on the album, the end is probably the only place it would have worked. There's another album they have where they put a song like that damn smack in the middle, and it's so weird. It just stops the album, like grinds the album to a halt. So at the very least, it's at the end of the album. I still don't like the song though. Although Manson's drummer, Gingerfish, at the time, plays piano on that song.
I seen that earlier and I was like, that's strange.
Yeah.
That is kind of strange. So let me start off by asking Tim, were you a fan of their previous album?
No, I'm not a fan of this band at all.
Okay. How about you, John?
I listened to the record again. Like I've heard the record a bunch in in the past, but like I haven't listened to it in, I would say 15 20 years.
Okay. But you never were a fan. You just never were a fan. Okay.
It's just Static X light to me.
So, John, I do want to talk about that because Tim made it interesting. Tim and I were chatting this morning. He was complaining. He's like, dude, this album is brutal. He said to me, this sounds like a lighter, a less aggressive Static X. And I said, okay, well, is this a less aggressive Static X or is Static X a more aggressive Powerman 5000?
I think you could... There's like 3 stages. Well, actually 4. So you could go like Powerman 5000's like the baby version of the industrial nu metal thing, and we'll just say industrial metal in general. And then you can go Static X. That's a couple steps up. Then you can go Fear Factory. You want to be a little bit more grown up. Then you go like Godflesh and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, Powerman 5000 is like a gateway band for me. Like they helped me, or they pushed me to go find other bands who had that sort of aesthetic. Now a valid question that I could ask myself is, okay, if I heard this album for the very first time this year, how would I feel about it? And I can't really answer it. I don't know if I would like it. Like if a band came out right now who sounded like Powerman 5000, like, and just that's what they released, like I'd never heard this before, I don't know how I would take it. Like, so, after all these years.
I think so for me, this album is kind of weird. And I remember when I heard it when the first time it came out and I didn't like it. And now that with the benefit of time, I can look back and I can think about how it does sound very much Static X-y. It does sound very much that they were going for a more commercial type sound. Whereas I loved Mega Kung Fu Radio because it was so fucking weird, right? Like he had those weird sort of growly vocals and you had a lot of songs where the bass was up in the mix and kind of funky.
I get why they didn't, because it would have clashed with the sound too much. But I do wish that they had brought some of the funky rap rock vibes of Mega Kung Fu Radio forward at all. But they just kind of dumped it. Like it was like the product that they're putting out on Mega Kung Fu Radio compared to Tonight the Stars Revolt, and then even Transform, like they sound like different bands every time.
Yes. And that to me was the turnoff for me, because they were so weird that I kind of got into it.
Yeah, the thing is, I like Mega Kung Fu Radio. It's very different, and I heard Tonight the Stars Revolt first, and then I went back and heard Mega Kung Fu Radio, and I was like, what the fuck is this? But the thing is, then like I grew to like it, and I was like, okay, yeah, I get this. It's completely different. There's a bunch of people who I've talked to who have told me that the scrapped Anyone for Doomsday is better than Tonight's the Stars Revolt. And I think they are full of crap.
That was eventually leaked, though, wasn't that? Was that eventually leaked? Yeah.
I actually had it before it came out. Like it had leaked. That was during the time where albums were leaking online. So I had it before it released. And then I remember going to the record store with my parents. And I remember it because it came out on the same exact day as Slipknot's Iowa. So I went there to go get those albums, and I got Iowa, and they were like, we didn't get any copies of the Powerman 5000 album. And I was like, that was weird. And then come to find out why. And I've gone on record as saying that kind of tanked their career. Like them scrapping, like, because it was Spider's idea. He wanted to scrap it and make another, like he's like, nah, this feels like we're phoning it in after the last album, and they nosedived after that because it was too long of a gap. Like, you can't do that. But in hindsight, going back, I'm like, you know what? It did kind of ruin him, but I kind of get what he's saying. Like, it does kind of sound, a lot of those songs sound like they were lesser versions of songs on Tonight the Stars Revolt.
They were rushing it.
Yeah. Like Bombshell's like a prime example of that.
Yeah, I mean, I went and listened to this a couple times, and then I went back and listened to Mega Kung Fu Radio to think to myself, was I kind of just, am I misremembering that I enjoyed this? Like it almost is like, it is almost as if, Spider, if you're listening, come to the show, the band sat down and said, you know what? We need to be more commercial. We're going to lean into the fact that our lead singer is Rob Zombie's brother. We're going to establish this quasi tangential white zombie, and we're going to make a go at it. If this had been their first album, I think I would have just lumped them in with every other new metal band that was coming out at the time. Right. Whereas
I get that.
Whereas Mega Kung Fu Radio, like, and we're eventually going to deep dive on this album once I can find someone who wants to talk about it, because Tim will just kill me if I try and make him talk about it for an hour. But there's the funk, there's the soul, there's the rap stuff, there's the aggressive stuff. Like, go back and listen to Neckbone, go back and listen to Standing 8 or Tokyo Vigilante #1. Like, there's a lot of really interesting stuff there. And then this, I'm not saying this album is bad, because Operate Annihilate was great. They Know Who They Are is great. It's just,
I love They Know Who You Are. It's almost like they made, not that the songs on Mega Kung Fu Radio were long or drawn out, but some of them were given room to breathe and develop, whereas I will firmly admit that songs on Tonight the Stars Revolt are very much intro, verse, chorus, verse, chorus,
very much
verse, chorus, outro.
Yep. 3-minute songs.
That's what they do. Yeah.
Yep.
And the thing is, it does feel like they went in and they deliberately did that.
Well, didn't it sell 1 million copies?
It sold very well.
Yeah, it was big for them.
It did really well. It had 3 big singles, and then it had another big single that was a session track that they used for it, because they had like 4 other songs that they released as like kind of singles, but like on soundtracks. And they did the cover of Relax for the
which,
Zoolander
by the
soundtrack.
way, is really a great cover. Tim and I covered that in our covers episode. It is 10 times better than this one. 10 times better than the Good Times Roll cover. I'm sorry. I thought the Relax cover, they kind of nail it.
I was so weirded out by the Good Times Roll cover, because I had never heard the original, like, prior to hearing, like, 'cause I had heard the Power Man 5000 version for years, because at that point, like, I had no knowledge of like the Cars. So the first time I heard Good Times Roll, the original, I was like, why is this so slow? But I come to like it, and I like the Cars, but yeah, I really like the groove of the Relax cover. They were on the Dracula 2000 soundtrack with Ultra Mega. The End Is Over was on something, I don't remember what it was. And then they had I think that was on Titan AE, which was an animated movie. But yeah, so they were all over the place for a very brief window of time, and then Bombshell came out, and then they were getting ready to release Anyone for Doomsday, and then that just imploded.
Yep.
And then 3 years later they released Free, and everyone was like, oh, you guys, okay.
I also think in hindsight now, it's kind of telling that in between Mega Kung Fu Radio and this, they ditched the percussionist, not the drummer, they ditched the percussionist, and they add a second guitarist, which I think changes their sound right there.
Very
because
much, yeah.
that was kind of the weird stuff, was the guy, with the bongos and the funky like Latin percussion shit. They basically told him go home, and they said, we're going to have John play rhythm guitar, and here we are.
So that's one of the few things I crap on Power Man 5000, especially Tonight the Stars Revolt, not so much Mega Kung Fu Radio, is the one thing I think could have been done a lot better, but I get because it's industrial-ish. I don't like the drums on Tonight the Stars Revolt. I think a lot of the time they're very boring, and they whereas a band like Static X, yeah, they get repetitive, but there's something there that like is driving. Whereas with Power Man 5000, a lot of the time when the guy's doing the drums, it's like, okay, I got, all right, do something else. Whereas in Mega Country Radio, there was like fills and stuff.
Yes.
Which helped by the fact that he had a percussionist too.
Yes. But I will say though, and I will give credit where credit is due. When Worlds Collide, Tonight the Stars Revolt, Automatic, Operate Annihilate, They Know Who You Are. Like there were some good tracks on this album. If it was any band other than Power Man 5000, I would have said these guys should be a huge radio hit. But again, I kept going back to seeing them on the floor of Ozfest playing Organized. And that was the old stuff I was looking for.
I wish I had gotten to see him during that period.
And it just didn't translate.
What about when in 2001 when Power Man 5000 changed their name and became the Union Underground for an album?
Oh, I don't remind me.
I have friends from high school who are like they'll like we'll be talking about music. They're like, who's that band who sound like Power Man 5000 but crappier? And I'm like, the Union Underground?
It's sad that you know that. But I also think there are some of the heavier songs where it was like they were saying, okay, we're going to go for it. And then they kind of backed off at the last minute. It would be like Tim and I saying, we're going to do the most controversial episode we've ever recorded.
I'll Burzum all the time.
And no, even worse than that. We're going to get on and we start the episode and I look at Tim and I say, Tim, I'm about to say the most controversial thing you have ever heard in your life. And he's going to go, okay. And I'm going to go, the first Korn album is the best Korn album. And then everybody just loses their mind. Like, what? If you're going to go for it. Don't pull your punches. And there were a couple songs where I kind of felt like they wanted to put the pedal on the metal and then they kind of backed off.
Son of X51 is a prime example of that.
Yeah. What is that? That's the weird sort of like, is that the one with the robotic voice comes in?
Yes.
And yeah.
But like it almost gets there. And then the song he does with his brother, Blast Off to Nowhere, which has one of the coolest intros on the entire album. I love that intro. But that one almost gets to like a heavy edge and it doesn't quite get there. Like Power Man 5000 never really hit that like metal, like they never just shoved the pedal to the floor, which I kind of wish they had.
I guess if we want to talk about Power Man 5000 shoving the pedal to the floor, we could, I'm going to get shit for this. We could talk about the new Code Orange song, which is Code Orange Man 5000. Is that?
I haven't heard it.
Listen to it, John, and then tell me what you think. Am I right, Tim?
Pretty much, yeah. I've seen a lot of comparisons like that.
Yeah.
I will say though, I looked at the track listing again. I do like the Nobody's Real song. That's a catchy one
song.
For me. Yeah.
Video doesn't make any sense, but it's a good song.
I also remember seeing earlier that the DJ was the dude from Limp Bizkit, right? He did some scratching on here.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, he did. He was kind of all over the place. He did scratching on this album. He did scratching on the Videodrone album. Orgy? Maybe?
He might remember. Maybe.
He was all over the place, huh?
Yeah, he did a bunch of guest spots. But yeah, I remember him doing work on this album.
Wow, he did do a lot of guest spots. We're looking at Soulfly, Videodrone, Power Man 5000. Mataleo from Biohazard, Chamber Music from Cold Chamber, Felons Revolutionaries, Dope, Rob Zombie, Dope again, Professional Murder Music.
Oh, is he the one who does the scratching on Felons and Revolutionaries?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was wondering because there's like two songs where they're just scratching out of nowhere. I'm like, where the hell did that come from?
Quick, we need a guest.
That's a great record.
I love that album. And I get so mad. Somebody described it as Ministry Light, and that annoyed me to no end.
Yeah, that's a band that you just do not hear anyone talk about. Is fucking dope. I think they get shit on a lot though.
They do.
I don't understand.
They get
why.
shit on because of the songs that aren't singles that everyone remembers, which is Die Motherfucker Die and Burn and Bitch, I guess as well. which I think Bitch was a single, but like I was like, Felons and Revolutionary is great, and it sounds nothing like the rest of their music, except for I guess little touches on American Apathy.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, Felons and Revolutionaries was mostly written by Edsel by himself.
Makes sense.
Okay.
Like
okay.
there's a demo version of Felons and Revolutionaries, which is literally Edsel playing everything by himself. And the difference between those versions and the stuff that's on Felons is like just slightly better mixing. So
I always thought A New Revolution was dope for some reson. Like I thought they like changed their name for the longest time.
No, A New Revolution is one guy from Slaves on Dope and two guys from Unloco.
Yeah.
And then a guy from one of those. Do you remember when MTV did that Battle for Ozfest show?
Yes.
A guy from A Dozen Furies was in that band too.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
That's I America is a fucking amazing record.
I like both of them. I think Rise is good and I think I America's good.
Yeah. Great record.
Man, you guys are making me feel so old. I don't know I don't even recognize half that stuff. So back to Power Man, right? We're not going to beat this dead horse forever. So and John, I'm not familiar with anything after this. So where do they go from here?
Okay, so they went on a magical journey. So they didn't release anyone for Doomsday. And then 2004, they kind of cropped back up and they're like, hey guys, we're back. And like most people were like, who are you? But so they came back with Transform, which doesn't sound like Mega Kung Fu Radio, doesn't sound like Tonight the Stars Revolt. They take on more of an alternative metal / rock vibe, which for them kind of works. Like they drop almost all the industrial elements. There's still little bits of electronic stuff here and there, but it's like brighter almost. Like how is like you wouldn't call like the early 30 Seconds to Mars stuff industrial, but there's electronic stuff in it. But the musicianship improved. Like instead of like just super simple tracks like Tonight the Stars Revolt mostly has, there's guitar solos on Transform. Like there's like a lot more melody. The songs are given more room to breathe and build. And there's like some of the songs go experiment a little bit. So it was a completely different thing. And the lead single did okay. But by that point, they've been gone for 3 years. So people were because anyone for Doomsday
that's an eternity. Yeah, that's an eternity. Yeah,
no, mainstream rock and like new metal had fallen out of favor at that point. And whether they were going to be that genre anymore, anyways, they were part of it. So yeah, it was like when Limp Bizkit put out Results May Vary in 2004. Like it nosedived.
We do eventually have to deep dive on that one, don't we?
It's not a bad album.
Eventually.
It's just
we're gonna have to deep dive on that one.
It's like 180-degree turn from Chocolate Starfish.
Which doesn't make any sense except for the departure of Wes. That's the only thing that makes sense for that. Yeah.
So they do Transform, and Transform does okay. Then most of the band who had stuck around left. Like, I think they lose the guitarist, the drummer, maybe the bass player. I think they might keep one of
all the original members. Okay.
Yeah. So one of the guitarist stays and Spider stays, and then they kind of disappear again, and they come back in 2006 and they release a punk album,
which is Destroy What You Enjoy.
Yeah.
Right?
Which when it first came out, I hated that album so much. I still don't love it, but there are some songs on there that are very good. There are some terrible songs, but there are some songs that are very good. And this would kind of be, not stylistically, this would kind of be how I felt about Power Man 5000 going forward. They would release an album I would, for the most part, think it was all right. And it would have a couple great songs, a couple really shit songs, and then a lot of stuff in the middle. The only time they have, however, one of their more recent albums, they started adding rap rock elements back in. Like the second to last one, which came out like 2 years ago, I think. It's called New Wave. And it wasn't a New Wave album. But that album also has some terrible songs on it. But yeah, it has some like parts where he's like rapping again. I'm like, what are you doing? It's over, sir.
I really have to dig into this stuff because I really want to figure out, what did I miss it?
If I took, they do go on some, there is some good stuff in that run. There's an album called Somewhere on the Other Side of Nowhere, which is probably the best album they did after Transform. And it's the one where they returned to, it's the closest return to industrial nu metal.
Okay.
They did. And there's some good songs in that album. And then after that, they released their worst album, which was, oh my God, I can't remember what it's called.
Is it Builders of the Future?
Yes. Oh my God. That album has 0 good songs on it. That album is terrible.
Tim, these guys literally banged out like a dozen records.
I know. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah. So Builders
literally
of the Future,
what I'm doing as we're talking. I'm like
Future
amazed how many records they have.
Was like that was me saying, no, this is it. I'm done. And then they were gone for a while. Then they had a covers album, which was whatever. It's a covers album. Although it did have a really good cover of Space Oddity on it. So they were gone for a while, and then they started to sneak back in, and I believe the next one was New Wave. And I kept being like, man, I don't give a shit. I don't want to hear. But I had heard the single enough where I was kind of like, this is kind of catchy. And then I finally dug into the album, and I was like, all right, it's pretty good. It was like half good. And then the most recent one, I felt the same. So we're back to like half good.
Here's an interesting tidbit. Tim and I like to find the obscure people to interview. And I was thinking maybe we should find the original percussionist, not the drummer, the percussionist. You know what this dude does now? He is one of the longest running members of the Blue Man Group in Los
Angeles. Great.
Seriously?
That is kind of fucking wild. So if you're listening, Jordan, please come on the show. We would love to pick your brain, right? The more obscure guests we get, the better. But I can't believe these guys almost a dozen records. I give him credit for changing his sound nonstop. And don't forget, there is a covers album in there, which I'm downloading right now because I really want to hear that. It just,
the cover of Jump from Van Halen's pretty fun, actually.
Yeah, that caught my eye, and the cover of Should I Stay or Should I Go sounds kind of interesting. So whatever, I'm gonna Electric Avenue, right?
The Electric Avenue one's really good. Should I Stay or Should I Go is okay. We Got the Beat is really boring. There's a couple of ones on there that are kind of like but Electric Avenue is good.
Okay. So we're quickly running out of time because Tim unfortunately has another commitment.
Hold on.
Wait.
So I just Googled on May 18th of 2011 at the Croc Rock in Allentown. It was Mushroomhead, Head PE, and Power Man 5000. I still remember to this day.
No shit.
When Power Man went on, the whole fucking place went outside and smoked and drank. And then when Mushroomhead came on, there were so many people in there, they had to stop people from coming in. That's how like their career was going at that time. And that was 2011. It's funny because Head PE opened. Everybody was rocking that. Power Man comes on, everybody goes outside, and Mushroomhead comes on, they all come back in. I still remember that to this day.
Was that what with the
sense,
Mushroomhead guys
honestly.
with that show, Tim?
No, that was in Cleveland.
Okay.
Yeah, no, that 100% makes sense. Like,
it was funny. And the singer dude was wearing some really ridiculous shit on stage, and I'm just like, what the fuck is he wearing?
Yeah, you if you can look up pictures of their promo wear during Somewhere on the Other Side of Nowhere and Builders of the Future is not very good. It's not very good.
Oh,
Get the spacesuits back.
I miss, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I really would like to find like one of these obscure guys, have them come on and talk about it, because I really, let's close with this question, John.
Yeah.
Do you think if they had stuck with their original sound, the Mega Kung Fu sound, if they had stuck with that, would they have had more longevity as one of those unique sort of new metal bands? Or do you think them changing to a more accessible commercial sound was the better thing they should have done?
Okay, so I'm going to answer the question, but also there's another band who did a very similar arc, who had a very similar sounding, well, I'm going to count it as their debut album before making a huge stylistic change and then becoming popular. I like to compare Mega Kung Fu Radio to Incubus's Science.
Okay.
So stylistically, yes, it's very different, but you have to consider the fact that they were doing this rap rock, rap metal thing. Both albums had heavy levels of funk, and there was experimentation on these songs. But then the next album for Power Man was Tonight the Stars Vault. The next album for Incubus was Make Yourself. And both of those albums were when the band blew up.
Right.
And made their name. And Incubus, for as much as I'm not the biggest fan of their modern stuff, they kind of stayed the course. And they kind of read a wave of momentum and like continued putting out albums that were popular. And they're still kind of around and doing stuff, I guess. But as far as like, if they had, like, we'll just stick with Power Man, if they had stuck with their sound, they probably could have, I don't know if they would have been allowed to make as many albums as they did.
Well, let me ask you this, John. I mean, you make a very valid argument comparing them to Incubus, right? The funk, the bongos, like all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And then they have, again, they're almost analogous to each other, and they make a more radio friendly album, which blows up, right?
Yeah.
So on album 3, where is the divergence between Incubus and Power Man 5000? Like how come Incubus, banged out 2-3 more albums?
Because
there was Make Yourself, there was Crow Left to Murder, there was Light Grenades.
Whereas Power Man or Incubus understood what was like working. They were like, okay, people liked Stellar and people liked Pardon Me, but Drive was what people liked. Like they were loving the melodic stuff. So they're like, all right, so Morning View, let's make the lead single a soft song. We'll have another ballad in there at some point too as a single, but then we can have little harder songs in there for the actual, like the real fans. But let's just use that. And that's what they did on that album. That's what they did on A Crow Left of the Murder, although the lead single on that one's a little bit harder. And then they did Light Grenades with Anomaly.
Mm-hmm.
So they understood. They're like, okay, this is our bubble. We can experiment a little bit, because Incubus does. I don't know what they do. I haven't heard the last like 2 or 3 albums, but I know even when they were being more and more melodic, they were still experimenting and doing weird shit on their albums. Power Man, they understood for a moment before they scrapped anyone for Doomsday, they're like, all right, people like us for the really straightforward, industrial, new metal-y, like punchy, hard tracks. So let's do Bombshell. And they did. Bombshell worked. Bombshell did well at radio. The problem, as somebody who's listened to that album many times, the rest of that album doesn't really have anything else there. It doesn't have a Nobody's Real. It doesn't have a They Know Who You Are. I don't even think it has a cover. So he may have said that he scrapped it because he didn't want a carbon copy, but I honestly, looking at that album, I cannot find you a second single. So I think he may have just realized we went too quickly and we might have messed up. Let's do a do-over. And the do-over took too long. Had Power Man been able to release Transform in 2001 instead of 2004, I think they could have had a similar route to Incubus, because I think that album had singles. That album had Free, it had the title track, it had Action, and there's a couple more in there that would have worked. But they messed up with Anyone for Doomsday, and they scrambled and took 3 years, and that was that.
That was it.
Incubus didn't have those gaps until late into their career, when Brandon wanted to do solo stuff, and then they wanted to do, I think one of them went to do like soundtrack stuff too. But by that point, like, who cares? It's you're 20 years into your career. You can take a break.
Yeah, do whatever the hell you want. By the way, Tim, that whole second song test for an album, A Crow Left of the Murder, is the rare negation of that test.
Really?
Because the second song, I swear, is the best song on that album. It gets up and it's going and it's moving. And then the rest of the album, I'm kind of just like, really? Yeah. Listen to the first four. Just listen to the first four
Left
tracks.
of the Murder was kind of like the end for me. I really like Science. I really like Make Yourself. I really like Morning View. And then there's a few songs on Crow Left of the Murder that I think are fine, but like as a whole album, I don't really like it.
Yeah, and that's the rare one where the second track is arguably the best track on the album. The rest is just kind of.
I don't think Head PE, even if they stayed the course, I don't think they get anywhere as big as Incubus. I think Incubus just has a special way of being able to write radio hits.
And let's be honest here, Brandon Boyd is a good-looking dude.
Exactly.
Right, that's a big. Yeah. There's a big difference between him and Spider from Power Man 5000. Right, like the different.
Like poofy blonde hair.
There's different types of women that enjoy those types of looks, and the population that thinks Brandon Boyd without his shirt on is hot is way larger than the population that thinks Spider with the rave goggles and the spiky blonde hair is hot.
So let's also break this down to another thing. Whereas, Power Man 5000 was a bit trendy, whereas Incubus, they started to go in an alternative rock or post grungy. No, I'm going alternative rock direction, which had been something that had been on radio for a decade already. So
yeah,
it already had an established people like this. Whereas Power Man, people were like, "Oh, this is interesting." But yeah. Like, as much as I love the new metal bands and I love the industrial ones, it was a very fleeting moment where all that collided.
Very, very true. Very true. Well, I think we're just about hitting the 40-minute mark. So I don't know if John definitely didn't change Tim's mind. John definitely put some seeds in my head. I'm going to go back and give the album another listen. Maybe I'm going to go rose-colored glasses.
I'll tell you what he did do for me, though. He made me want to go and check out the two albums after this, because I want to see the progression from this record. Listen, I'm always the villain, and I like being the villain. I'm always the villain in a lot of things.
Being the villain's more fun.
No, it is. But here's the thing. I just think that, this band, it's not that I think that they're a bad band and they're not talented. I just think that at that time, there was other bands doing this same style just 1,000 times better, if that makes sense.
Fair enough.
Which, as much as I'm defending the album, is completely fair.
Yeah. I just think that, like I said to Jay earlier, when I hear Wisconsin Death Trip and then I hear this, I'm going to lean right to Wisconsin, because it's just, I guess, what's the word that people use? Aggro or something. You know what I mean?
It's just more aggressive. It's more in your, it's more in your taste wheelhouse than this.
Yeah. Like I see why people like this record a lot. I get it, because this is the record that more of a younger crowd gets into compared to Wisconsin Death Trip. I think the Static X is more of the Static X to me gets more of the people that like the really heavy shit, whereas this you get the people that like the Incubus and stuff. You know what I mean? I see
Wisconsin
the two.
Death Trip is also like slightly darker as well. I heard them close to the same time. Like I heard Wisconsin Death Trip for the first time in it was either when did it come out in 2000 or 99?
99.
Okay, so I think I heard it in 2000. Because I definitely heard it after hearing Power Man 5000. And I immediately liked it. But yeah, it is definitely it hits harder. It's a bit darker. It's got that menacing vibe, and it has those slow, like plotting songs that like are built like Trance's the Motion and
I was literally
December,
just gonna say Trance. Yeah.
Like it's got those things that Power Man doesn't really have.
Yeah,
maybe
like I think Bled for Days is probably better than that whole record.
that might be an interesting topic that we can dive in a future episode, where the split, right? Because right about 99, 2000 is where bands either started going way more rock or way like they heard Slipknot and they said, well, fuck it. If they can go for it, we can go for it. And they went a little bit more aggressive and kind of pushed what would have been acceptable as far as still getting on the radio.
It worked so well for Down the Sun.
Aggressive. Right. Very, very true. Very, very true.
I love that album, but yeah, no radio accessibility, even with the fact that was it Clown who produced that?
Yep.
Yeah. Nope. Slipknot tag did not help him.
No, it was kind of like I almost want to say kind of almost like a Dry Kill Logic in the sense of it was a little bit too aggressive by half and a little bit ahead of its time.
Can we talk about that for like 60 seconds?
Sure.
So Dry Kill Logic, when I was younger, I remember hearing Rot a lot, and I would occasionally hear other songs in the album, but I always thought Rot was good, but I always wrote them off. And within the last year, people kept pushing me to really listen to Darker Side of Nonsense. I was like, fine, I'll listen to Darker Side of Nonsense. I don't really like the opening song, that like Nightmare. I'm kind of like, it's all right. The rest of that album, fucking amazing. I love the rest of that album. Like,
there you go.
So good. And I was like,
that's weird.
I was like, oh, why did I ignore this before? This is really, really good.
Yep. I felt the same thing about Nothing Faces Violence. After listening to it, I was like, man, what was I thinking? What was I thinking? All right, so we're quickly out of time. Tim's going to run. He's doing double duty this evening. So first of all, we want to thank Jon for coming on again. Jon, I know we will definitely have you on again. I really want to line you up and Chris from Machine Man. And one night we're going to do an all industrial episode where we're going to go into the fucking record crates and we're going to pull out our favorite obscure stuff. I think we can have a lot of fun having that conversation. So be on the lookout for Jon. Jon, if people want to find you, have a YouTube channel, right? That they can find you on?
Yeah. Just look up Detox Tube.
There you go.
I've been uploading lots of like full album stuff because other people don't have it on their pages, but I'm going to start going back to like actually making original content because there's enough channels doing full albums. Screw it.
Perfect. So find Jon at Detox Tube. Find us on Twitter, on Instagram, Newbreed_podcast, newbreedpodcast@gmail.com. Is there an album you want to defend that you've heard Tim and I talk shit on in the previous episode? Please let us know. These are fun conversations because if anything, it forces Tim and I to go back and listen to something we might not normally would have. So once again, we want to thank Jon for coming on. We want to thank all of you for tuning in, watching, listening. And until next time, this is the New Breed Podcast saying peace.
Farewell.